In this tutorial I'll show you how to model this egg cup and create the far out swirling Octane material. I posted this to my Instagram a few days ago and had a few requests to show how it was done, so here it is. We'll be using some deformers, volume modeling, and all the animation will be created in the Octane materials. Let me know in the comments below if there are any other posts of mine you'd like to see a tutorial on, and please remember to like and subscribe and you'll get notifications of when I upload new videos. Okay, so let's get started. So let's start with a sphere. I'm just going to leave this at the standard size. I'm just going to turn on the garage shading with lines, and just to show you, rather than this standard grid, I'm going to go with this octahedron shape. I feel it's better for distorting. Let's get a taper, and I'm going to leave this at 250 by 250 by 250. Stick that under the sphere. I'm going to up the strength to 63, I think I used. And if we go into the front view, here we're kind of getting an egg shape, but it looks a bit too distorted at the moment. We're going to move this up. That's about 60, I think. And then we're going to get a squash and stretch I've used in a previous tutorial. But we're only going to use this to actually just stretch the egg into shape. So I'm going to move this factor up to about there, and that's kind of our egg shape basically. So if we go back to our shading, that's pretty easy way of creating an egg. And I guess you could animate this down the line by, you know, doing a bouncy egg or something. Let's up the segments on this to like 100, and then we'll create the egg cup. So for the egg cup, what I'm going to do is make a copy of our egg. Actually, I should probably call that egg. For this shape, I'm going to go to Objects, Current State to Object. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll call this inner, and this is going to be the inner part of the egg cup. So let's just increase that a little bit in size, so it's not intersecting with the egg itself. And then I'm going to duplicate that. This is going to be the outer. And then I'm going to go to the coordinates, and I'm going to increase the scale by, let's say, 0.2, 1.5, 1.2. Okay, so this, you kind of might wonder what this is, but we're going to create our shapes of the egg cup out of this. It will make sense in a second. What we'll do then is bring in a cube and match the. So this is going to be like the top. So I'm going to make this 250 by 250. Oh, by 250. I guess it doesn't need to be too high, but we're just going to use this so we can actually slice the top off. I'm going to put this to about 90 in the height. And then if we bring in a volume builder and a volume mesher, those together, and we'll put all three of these objects in there. Now what we want to do is look at our ordering. So we want the outer and the inner to be subtracted from the outer, so that should make like a hollow shape. And then we're going to subtract the cube from that, so then that leaves us with this. If I hide the egg, that leaves us with this kind of top of the egg cup shape. Let's change the voxel size to something like 2, and I'm going to put a smoothing on there of, let's say, 1. Right, now if I go back into the front view, what I want to do next is just create the leg and the base. So we'll create the base first. So let's create another sphere. I'm going to make this one that octahedron again. And this one we're going to make, we're going to say like -300. And we'll duplicate that cube, and I'm going to use that to slice off the bottom. Now I'm doing this in a way, a kind of convoluted way. You could do this just by creating a spline and then using the lathe tool to rotate around it. So if you're on version 19, say, of Cinema, and you haven't got this, I would just use the lathe tool to do this shape. When I am using the volume builder, I just think you get kind of a nicer look when you're trying to create these like ceramic-y kind of objects. So let's add both of those in. The ordering up here doesn't matter, but kind of want to keep track of it, so I'm going to name these. So we'll call this one top cut, base cut, and then this sphere we'll call that base. Now you'll see that we can see sort of like all of the polygon edges here. So we're going to volume builder because we've actually just got a straight sphere in there. Let's widen this out. We can click on that and actually change that to perfect primitive. That will make it nice and smooth. Now I'm going to try and keep the ordering right here. So we want all these connected apart from the base cut, which we want to be a subtracted. That's the base of our egg cut. Then we just bring in a cylinder. This is going to kind of join it all together. Drag this in. I kind of like to keep the ordering up here kind of similar to down below, just so I can kind of keep track of everything. I'm going to add this on down here because even though it's cutting through the top, because we've got this subtraction over here, the layering means the subtraction will take over. So that's that. What I'm going to do on the cylinder is actually get another taper, add that onto the cylinder, say fit to parent. Then I'm going to up the strength to say -30, but actually widen it at the top, see, so we get a little bit of tapering there. I will take curvature down to 0, make that editable, and I'll go into this polygon mode. And I'll get this kind of a loop cut tool. I'm just going to make a cut in the middle. Probably display lines. Actually, turn these off so I can see what I'm doing. So I've just made a loop cut along the cylinder. And I'm going to select those points. I'm going to turn these back on again. And I'm just going to kind of cinch those in. Give us kind of a bit of a smoother shape. And what I might do is the smoothing here, I might up that to 2. Moves it all out. And then I think at the base of the egg cup, I'll just hide that taper. Base, I added on kind of circle, just to add a little tiny bit of detail on this rim. Let's just change the plane that sits in, if I can get that right. E, Z. Bring that down. I want to kind of have it so it pokes over the rim, so let's just bring that up a little bit. In, down. But what's that? I've got that like, what's that? But the radius is 73, so let's keep that as is. Put that in the volume builder. So you've got that little extra detail. I'm going to put it inside. I just want to kind of it to be a hint of something, not necessarily. There you go. See, it's almost gives it a bit of a edge, a bit, so it's not totally round. Okay, so then I'm going to turn our back on. And then I cut a strip out the middle. So let's just call this egg cup. Bring in another cube. We'll make this one 250 again, but only 50 high, like 250. And then I'm going to cut a slice out about there, I think. So let's add that in, and I'm going to say subtract. So that's left this gap. Then I'm going to copy everything and call this one stripe. And then I'm going to delete. Well, actually, what we could do is just leave everything else in there and just change this to intersect. Then got that separate stripe there. So that's the basic model for the egg setup. We'll create the scene just by using a plane. Make something like 1000 by 2000. Maybe I like this to like 50 by 50, and then we'll put in a bend deformer. Try and get this first time. rotate that to -90. I might make this like 500. Let's go into a side view. I just want to line this up. Grab our floor. Back. I'll probably just set up the camera. I think for this version, I'm going to do a version for this tutorial, so I'm going to make this 1080, 1920 by 1080, 25 frames per second. And then we'll have a look. We'll go to the configure our view, and I'm going to change the opacity to 100 on those bars, just so I can see what's happening. And probably just have mostly just a front forward-facing camera on this, but go to a tele lens. Like that. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward. Just hide that bend. Okay. Press save, and then we'll open up the Octane live viewer, and this is where we're gonna do that kind of wavy Hypno material. Okay. I'm going to change this to path tracing in my settings before I press the button. I'm just going to set this to 500, 10, 10. Maybe I'll set this to 10, and adaptive sampling on. Right, so let's set up the scene, and then we can do this kind of the actual Hypno egg itself. So let's just bring in a main HDRI environment. I have one on my system, this side lights. I can't remember, it's in my library. I can't remember exactly where I got it online, but if I can find a resource, I'll put it in the link below. Then I'm going to up the power on that to something like 3. So I've got some overall lighting. This is just like 2, obviously side lights. And then we can create a Octane material, a use for the background. And what am I going to go with? Like a yellowy, orangey sort of colour. Right. We'll just do a very simple kind of version of it here, just like a shiny material with a gradient on, and then we'll talk about building the egg one. So for the base one, let's get a Octane glossy material, and we'll drag that onto the egg, and that's egg cup and the slice. I'll better call this egg cup on stage. Stage even. And then let's go into the node editor for egg cup. And then, so the first thing we want to do is add in a gradient, and that's going to go into the diffuse channel. Now I'll move this around so we can see everything at the time. Right, and then I'm going to add in my gradient. So let's pick colors. I've written down the colors that I used. So let's go 320. 163. The other far side 250, 57 by 38. I think I'm going dark at the top, lighter at the bottom, and then here I'm going to make this 263, 100, 100. Okay. And obviously, as you see, it's just basically taking the middle color for the moment, so we just need to change the way that this is interpreted. The way I got around this is making that radial. We've got it there, but it's not reaching the whole way, so brought up these other boxes, these other tabs. I'm going to go to the transform, change, not all of them, I'm going to untick aspect ratio, change the X, so now we've got that gradient running top to bottom. Let me just see, bring that darker one in, and bring that darker so it's just over the tip, and we're moving down. Okay. What we could probably do is bring in an image and actually I've got this grunge map that I'm just going to use to put some noise to roughen it up a little bit. I'll add that into the roughness, but what I'm going to do is actually add a gradient, bring that in, pop that into the roughness, put the texture into the gradient, and with the gradient we're going to kind of change the contrast of this. So there's a neat trick. If you click on the gradient, you can do this on any lab. If you click on the gradient, in this case I'm going to go solo node, and it means we just see what this is doing to that material rather than seeing everything, and that means we can kind of change it here and see what we're doing, see what we're changing. So the more black we've got in this case, the shinier it's going to be, and the more white is the more rough it will be. So just so if we uncheck or check disable solo mode, we can kind of see what effect that's having, and now we know what we're doing. We can kind of up this, bring in a little bit more shininess, and we've got a bit of roughness coming through as well. What we could probably do, we're going to make sure this is path tracing mode. I'm going to lock off the camera so we're in full size view, so we can kind of have a close-up look, so we can see those details on there. We can see that roughness that's on there. Might see if I can also use this to add a little bit of a bump. So I'm going to duplicate that image texture, duplicate that gradient. I'm going to pump that into the bump channel. I'm going to go to UV transform. I'm going to scale that bump right down. It's so far down it's made these lines, but I actually don't mind the lines. I think it kind of looks like it's been turned on a lathe or something. Maybe though it's kind of roughened it up a bit too much, so I might bring this. Okay, and this is where you can play for a long time, but let's get to the meat of this, which is to do this egg. Okay, so let's press file, save. I'm going to use this tool up here just to select the egg area, so we're only rendering that each time, just updating this section. We don't need to keep re-rendering the bottom section. Then we'll go to create a new glossy material. We'll call this egg. And what I should probably do is stick that on the egg to begin with. Okay, so we've just got our solid white, bring up our node editor, and I'll try and arrange this so we can kind of see everything all at once. So let's move this. Okay, right, so the first thing we want to do is bring in a noise. Drag that in, and I'm going to take that into our diffuse. You can see it's just applying that. Pretty boring at the moment. We'll keep it with a purling noise. What I want to do is change the projection. We're going to change the projection from mesh UV to XYZ to UVW. And then we're going to add in a gradient. Pump that into there, and the gradient into diffuse. Now we can see what we're looking at. It's still black and white because our gradient is just black and white. So what we can do is pick one of our presets, or we can put whatever colors we want in there at all. So for my daily render, I use this pattern. So we've already got some crazy patterns going on, almost looks like a planet. Is if we go to the noise, we can play around with some of the settings here to kind of get more of a pattern that we like. So the octaves, I'm going to take that down to 1, so we're going to simplify it. And then I'm going to mess around with the gamma and the contrast. If you see, we can change or go through that gradient of colours by adjusting these, getting it to a point we like. So I think on my version, I'll get to the point where I did on my render, and then we'll have a little play with it. Let's change the gamma to 1 and contrast to 4. Then we go back to our texture projection. We're going to lock the aspect ratio for scale and then up the scale, and as you can see, we can get it to a point where we get that nice kind of crazy looking set of lines. I might put the scale at something like 20. Okay. And then what we do is I kind of like the amount of colours here, but I didn't want to go in and adjust them all by hand, so you can amend them by adding in colour correction. Bring that in, take the gradient into the texture and the colour correction into the diffuse. And then in the colour correction we can change the hue. We can change the hue to get the kind of the colours that we want. So I think I changed this to something like 0.6. Yes, so we've got these pinks and teals, and 0.66 actually, and then I think the saturation, just take that up a little bit. It's got quite a nice colour, and then if you notice, there's kind of little bumps in between, so we can kind of use this gradient we've created, because we had that noise which is all very fine. Now bringing in the gradient, we've created all these lines. Now we can want to create another gradient to actually pump it into the bump map, but we want it to be black and white. So let's add in another gradient. Take that into the bump, and then we're going to take this gradient into this gradient. And then if I solo that, we can, now we've got black and white set of lines, and now you can up the contrast on these, kind of get a more defined bump on your material. So label that, you can see the little bumps there, the little lips. Okay. With that done, for roughness, I think I just put on a simple flow, so as to say something like 0.2. Yeah, so looks nice. And then we can animate. So to animate this is super easy. Let's just I've just noticed I need to go to my project settings. Let's just change this to 25 frames per second, and we're going to have 100 frames. And we're going to animate this texture projection. So what we're going to do is animate this, the rotation of the X. So on frame 0, I'm going to set a keyframe. Frame 100, I'm going to move this to 360, set a keyframe. And then we can see our texture animating around. Now at the minute it kind of is going in a completely, you know, it's going in a circle from the middle, so I found I got more interesting sort of shapes by actually moving the position here. So I'm just gonna, if you move the position up and down, say something like minus 10, and then when it rotates, you see now it's rotating from a position down here, so you get this more interesting change in shapes. So if I go to our timeline, I'm just going to make sure that that is set to linear. Play that back. Yeah, I think that looks cool. I might just change the rotation where we're looking. You know what, the easiest way of changing that is just to rotate the egg slightly. Maybe I don't want it kind of going around this way, I want it kind of coming towards us a little bit. There you go, like that. There's our Hypno egg sort of texture. And the cool thing about this noise is now you've got all of that set up, and the point where I should press save, we go back into the noise. You've got a couple of other types of noise here. You've got this turbulence and circular, which is quite cool, and these chips. Now you might find though that with the turbulence. You might want to then, you know, play around the gamma and contrast to kind of get the size and shape of the lines you want, and also maybe the scale, the overall scale. Same with the circular. You know, this might be far too big, but it might be quite cool. I mean, I used it in another daily render, this circular one. So let's just go back to where we were with the purlin. Okay, and then go back to the main view. I am going to set this to a smaller size, like 0.5. Going on. I think I am going to actually, on my camera, I haven't put a Octane tag, so that would help. I'll put an Octane camera tag. I am going to slightly rotate the camera, I think, so we're kind of looking down a little bit. With nothing selected, otherwise it will target to the camera. We'll go targeted area light, so it just puts a target right in the middle. And I'm just going to move this off to one side. Kind of brighten this up. Take this down. Around size of this. Then I might get another one, put it the other side. Brighten, that kind of makes everything look a bit more interesting, just brightens it up a little bit. And then for the camera, I'm going to add a little bit of depth of field. So I'm going to turn autofocus off, change the aperture to something. I'll go higher to begin with, like 10. That blurs everything. You want to click this little focus tab here, and then you can click anywhere on screen. And this seems to be new in the latest version of Octane. Before you would click anywhere and it would just focus on that area. Now it's actually being a bit more intelligent, saying, you know, exactly what do you want to focus on. So I want to focus on my egg model, and now we can, you know, maybe up the aperture a little bit. You see where it's kind of blurring there. We're just focusing here. I might just put it back to what I might go 15, so just a tad bit. And there we go. That's our Hypno egg model with this crazy shape on it. So I hope you found this interesting. I hope I didn't waffle on too much, and I will be back with a new tutorial hopefully in a few days. Okay, I'll see you soon. Bye.